Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with Rogue Trader, and as promised, this is the first episode in a playthrough of the alpha release that they just dropped on, what was it, Wednesday? Tuesday? I don't know. All the days are starting to blur together for me. Want to apologize once again. It took a while for me to be able to start dropping content for this. A lot of things have happened over the past week. My grandfather-in-law passed away, which is expected. He was 80 plus, but my wife has been stressing out over it, doing a lot of work for it, and we ended up having to call an ambulance for her, sitting in the hospital. Just a lot going on. There was just no way I could do anything regarding this, but most of that is cleared up now. We have the funeral on Monday, but other than that, we're good. So I feel comfortable trying to start releasing content for this game. So I appreciate you all's patience. Hope you all enjoy it. I'm not going to promise we're going to do a full playthrough. I don't know how buggy this might end up being. In the playthrough that I'm doing on my own, I haven't experienced any serious issues, but I know a couple of other people who have reviewed it said, you know, they had issues where the main quest would just bug out and fail, things of that nature. Plus, who knows, they might do another major patch while we're playing it, which would of course delete the save. So this is more so just for fun and to give you all an idea of what the game is like. So I'm not, you know, making any hardcore promises about, yeah, we're going to get through this. Obviously, once the full game releases, we will most definitely do a full playthrough on the channel. All right, and with that, I don't think there's anything else. Let's go ahead and jump in. Oh, quick note, it does start you off in Act 2. So we're not starting from the very beginning of the game. You're actually already level 15. So don't have any expectations regarding character creation or anything like that. I'm going to go with a male rogue trader, and we're just going to play normal. When there's bugs and things lifted up and we know it should be a clean version, we can flip over the core. Boom. Okay, start of Dossier. Dossier 17 KB, compiled and processed on the order of the most gracious Lord Captain Theodora von Valancius. Candidate, satisfies the consanguinity criteria, bears kinship to the Lord Captain in the 7th degree, from a dynastic offshoot in the Scars sector. Current location of progenitors not specified. Gender, male. Occupation before requisition, so you can be a void ship captain or Navy officer. You can be a commissar, so you have great weapon skill, willpower, and a proficient in coercion. You could be the leader of an unspecified criminal organization. Now, in the lead up to this game, I've talked a lot about wanting to worship chaos, but again, I didn't. For what I've played through in the alpha version so far, I don't think that's really possible yet. So we're going to go the other route and say that we're someone who worships the Emperor and wants to make sure that the Emperor's will is spread throughout the galaxy. So I'm going to go with a void ship captain in the Imperial Army. Planet of birth and circumstances of early life. So you can come from an Imperial world, a feudal world, which is going to give you greater strength, things of that nature, a forge world, which is going to give you greater tech use, Medicae, and things of that nature, or a fortress world, which is going to help you focus on agility, perception, and willpower. We're going to go with an imperial world. At the Lord Captain's request, the most significant episodes in the candidate's biography that demonstrates his personal qualities and performance under pressure has been highlighted. Based on the collected data, this is... So there was an uprising on a hive world, there was an attack by a pirate armada on a pleasure world, or there was a major criminal incident involving void ships. We'll do that one. And you also see they give you some starting equipment based upon the decisions that you've made. While the details have been expunged from the archives, the fragments of information that remain make it possible to reconstruct an account of these events. Evidence indicates that one of the Astra Militarum regiments was using Imperial Navy vessels assigned to it in order to ship contraband cargo. The void ship under the candidate's command was among those being used to transport contraband cargo. When the candidate learned of the unlawful operation, he sent out invitations to a fictitious officer party in order to lure everyone involved in the crime to a single bay, and then triggered the depressurization procedure, which was later attributed to a glitch in one of the ship's calculators. Interesting. Used position to arrest the culprits and brought them before a tribunal, disregarding the complex hierarchical relations between the Astra Militarum and the Navis Imperialists. He's not beneath using guile. We'll go with sent out the invitations. Notable qualities exhibited when acting in difficult or ambiguous circumstances: caution in taking action, aptitude for complex social machinations, ruthlessness towards internal enemies of the Imperium. The qualities exhibited are deemed to be valuable and desirable in a potential successor to the Lord Captain. The candidate's profile has been deemed worthy of submission to the most gracious Lord Captain for further appraisal. With regard to the requisition of the candidate from his current position to serve the needs of the illustrious von Valancius dynasty, the final decision rests with the most gracious Lord Captain. End of dossier. Several weeks have passed since the day Theodore von Valancius perished. On that ill-fated day, the rogue trader's void ship was attacked by madmen hungry to capture the dynasty's prized possession, the warrant of trade. Rogue Trader, a unique hereditary imperial servant assigned with a mission of exploring and exploiting the still uncharted regions of the galaxy for humankind. Warrant of Trade, a sacred Imperium relic that certifies the outstanding rights of the rogue trader across the galaxy. Fortunately for the thousands of lives who depend on the protection of their master, Lady Theodora's heir and the now ruling von Valancius, Lord Rogue Trader, fought off the villains and protected the dynasty's sacred relic. In his effort to carry out Lady Theodora's last assignment, Rogue Trader came up against a monstrous plot, which ultimately led to the death of the Imperial world Rykad Minoris. Imperium of Man, a galaxy-spanning interstellar human empire ruled by the living God who is known as the Emperor of Mankind. By the God Emperor's will alone did the rogue trader escape with his life when Rykard's star mysteriously vanished, leaving cold darkness in its wake. So God Emperor, the Emperor of Mankind, the Master of Mankind, all the same person, the ruler of the Imperium and savior of all of mankind. One last desperate push, and the Imperium's mantle hid the fleeing souls from the pursuing enemy. However, testing trials still lie ahead. After several weeks in the warp, the rogue trader found himself on the fringes of his trade empire, amid scattered worlds, now lost in the cold void at the whim of the whirling warp. Warp, an alternate dimension of pure energy and madness existing as a mirror to the real space, also known as the Immaterium, the Imperium, the Aether, the Sea of Souls, or warp space. The Lord Captain must forge new routes to planets conquered in the past and fulfill one of the covenants of the Warrant of Trade, to restore that which has been lost. Lord Captain, allow me to report. Our journey through the warp is coming to an end. Lady Navigator Orsilio informs me that we have reached the point where we can translate to real space in the Furimbada system. Navigator, a sanctioned noble mutant whose genes allow them to safely traverse the war space. Real space, a term used to refer to the material universe as opposed to the warp. The Lady Navigator and our pilots are awaiting your permission to begin the process. The Furimbada system is home to Footfall, the only Imperium outpost with a functioning wharf in the Coronis Expanse. Footfall, the massive void port on the edge of the Coronis Expanse, and a wretched hive of villainy, trade, and rogue traders' intrigues. The tech priests are begging you to have mercy on the machines worn down by the warp, and to allow the servants of the Omnissiah to heal the void ship's wounds in the dock. Tech priest, the adept cult of the machine, responsible for maintaining advanced technologies. The prayers and rituals will take a few days, which our astropathic choir will use to establish a connection with the prime worlds of your trade empire, Jargonis, Janus, and Kiava Gamma. Astropath, a powerful sanctioned psyker who can send and receive messages through space using their telepathic abilities. We have already received a message that was previously adrift in the Immaterium. Master Zakari Wise has reported receiving an invitation. The Liege of Footfall humbly requests an audience with the rogue trader of the Von Valancius dynasty. According to Master Zachary, the message was tinted with shades of pleading. I quote, "Apparently the Liege is anxious to meet as soon as possible." Footfall, the place where sin and sanctity go hand in hand. Reverend Hieronymus Doloroso will most likely expect a visit from me. I imagine he will be interested in talking to you as well, rogue trader. I will be leaving your void ship when we arrive on Footfall, rogue trader. Once that is done, consider the Lord Inquisitor's task complete. But before I leave you, rogue trader, Heinrix produces a small device wrapped in velvet. I was supposed to deliver this to Lady Theodora, but considering the circumstances, I am giving it to you. This is an elucidator, a sacred machine that can translate the languages of distant and lost worlds to Imperial Gothic. It is even capable of handling Xenos languages, up to a point. There may be flaws in translation, but the overall meaning should be clear. Are you leaving us, Heinrix? The arrangement between the Lord Inquisitor and your predecessor was that I be transported to Footfall and no further. I dare not take advantage of your generosity and patience any more than I already have, rogue trader. Argenta, who is this Reverend Hieronymus whom wants to speak with me? He is the head of the Drusian mission on Footfall and one of the most prominent clergymen in the sector. Drusians, followers of the cult of Saint Drusus, a legendary hero of the Angevin Crusade who founded the Calixtus sector for the Imperium of Man. Paying him a visit is a good thing for any loyal servant of the Emperor to do. Argenta lowers her eyelashes. I assisted his mission before I joined Lady Theodora on her voyage. I need his blessing to accompany the new rogue trader of the Von Valancius dynasty. If you wish to have me aboard your void ship, I request that we meet with Reverend Hieronymus. Vigdis, tell me about the system we are arriving in. For Abundus is valuable due to its close proximity to the Maw, the gateway to the Imperium. The system is mostly known for Footfall, the main base for merchants, privateers, and rogue traders traversing the Coronis Expanse. The Coronis Expanse, a scattered, partly explored region on the frontier of the Imperium, full of fearsome Xenos, treasures, heathen worlds, and the echoes of ancient doom. Additionally, the star itself is orbited by an Adeptus Mechanicus station, which is off-limits to outsiders. Adeptus Mechanicus, an official name for the cult of the machine that maintains, constructs, and honors sacred technologies of humankind. Altar Templum Calixtus X-17. I had the honor of tending to the shrine for a few thousand cycles. I suggest you abstain from visiting it, as most tech brothers at the station are engaged in meditative calculations that should not be interrupted. What do I need to know about Footfall? It is the largest port and the trading capital of the Coronis Expanse. It has a dockyard that will allow us to inspect and repair the void ship, and it boasts its own astropathic choir, the Coronis Expanse Communications Nexus. Not to mention pirate hideouts, smuggler caches, and forts belonging to a dozen gangs, groups, and factions. In the Coronis Expanse, the Imperium relies on this as its outpost. The fringes of humanity's domain rarely resemble its central worlds, but so long as Footfall serves the God Emperor, so far as it can, it will be considered a citadel of the Imperium, although I have heard that the tides of sins are underwhelming, to say the least. due to Footfall's remoteness, it has developed its own rules and customs. Many of the goods that can be procured there will be considered heresy in the heart of the Imperium, enough to warrant summary execution. Moreover, Footfall is the domain of the rogue traders who disregard certain Imperial laws by virtue of the warrant they bear. Footfall is just a brief stop. What next? As soon as we solve the issues plaguing the ship and establish contact with the key worlds of your trade empire, the time will come for your Magna Accessio, the official ceremony of donning the mantle of the rogue trader. It is mostly a formality at this point. You already possess all the privileges granted by the warrant, and yet it is a major milestone in your personal history. The moment your name graces the list of heads of the Von Valancius dynasty, we are all looking forward to that day, Lord Captain. Abelard, do you know anything about the Liege of Footfall? Vladam Takara is a very peculiar young man. Consider your upcoming conversation a baptism of fire in Footfall's political arena. Such things are not spoken out loud, but Liege Takara is the appointee of the Caspalica Mission, the largest robber baron crime syndicate in the Calixis sector. Caspalica Mission, the Footfall chapter of the most successful crime syndicate of the Imperium of Man, founded in the Calixis sector. They specialize in the cold trade, the buying and selling of all kinds of Xenos rubbish. Cold trade, illegal trade of Xenos, alien commodities, and artifacts. Xenos, a term usually used by the humans that means stranger and identifies alien, non-human forces. Footfall was previously run by a liege who did business with several criminal factions at once, but he suffered an accident. The reins of power were picked up by Vladimir Takara, whose appointment benefits not only the Caspalica, but also their most powerful ally in the Coronis Expanse, rogue trader Caligos Winterscale. Vladam is a slippery yet very cautious fellow. He does not usually beat around the bush and does not play mind games. Perhaps more importantly, he is no fool. Fools do not rise as high in the Caspalican hierarchy. Keep all this in mind. You are a rogue trader. You stand above him in status and wield considerable power. Having said that, history has seen cases where the Caspalican barons crossed swords with rogue traders and emerged victorious. Do not forget that and remain vigilant. The Caspalica, vile tech thieves. Pascal's Vox barks out the last word like a profanity. Why does the Liege want to see me so badly? Not you personally. He wishes to meet with the rogue trader of the Von Valancius dynasty. Takara does not know about Lady Theodora's death and is simply seeking an audience with the powers that be. My gut is telling me that something must be very wrong on Footfall if our astropath managed to read such strong emotion in such an anodyne message. We have no information, Lord Captain. The broadcast from the Footfall Astropathic Choir was the only missive Master Zachary has received lately. Tell the Lady Navigator I give her leave to make the transition from the warp into real space. Vigdis begins issuing instructions. The massive ship appears to change with her every word. The bridge is set in motion as hundreds of people start to prepare for the shift to real space, and measured chanting fills the corridors to safeguard the vessel and its crew. Vigdis turns to you again. One more thing, Lord Captain. No one at the station knows about Lady Theodora's demise and you inheriting the title. Liege Takara will be informed. It is required so we can use the dock. And besides, he is expecting a personal audience with the rogue trader, and he will not meet with an unknown person of unclear standing. However, there is still the matter of announcing your arrival. You can either arrive on the station with the proper pomp and ceremony, or choose to visit it incognito. Tell me in detail how these choices will benefit me. According to Footfall's unwritten laws, rogue traders enjoy special privileges that exceed even the power of the Liege. However, not everybody chooses to take advantage of them, depending on the situation. Arriving incognito will give you more room for maneuver, while an official visit will allow you to directly intervene in local matters. I shall explain, if you do not mind. According to the unwritten rule, every rogue trader arriving at the station has a right to veto any of the Legion's decisions. But there's a catch. The Coronis Expanse is home to several influential rogue trader dynasties, and Footfall is where these interests intersect. Of course, that does not prevent certain persons, namely Caligo's Winterscale, from subtly pulling the strings in Footfall. If you, as a new rogue trader, start your career with an official landing and a parade in your honor, the other dynasties may see this gesture as the newcomer challenging their spheres of influence. I do not see that as a bad thing, necessarily. Old Man Winterscale may take slight offense. Corridor will be put on our guard. But you have just risen to prominence, and most people in the Coronis Expanse have not even heard about Lady Theodora's departure yet. It must be made clear that the banner of Von Valancius soars as high as ever. If I may, I would recommend arriving incognito. You will have plenty of opportunities to savor the sweetness and the burden of power, but right now is the last time you could take refuge in obscurity. This way, your arrival will not draw much attention, and the people will treat you as a person, and not the almighty sovereign anointed by the emperor. It could turn some situations to your advantage. I have decided. Tell the liege I will arrive incognito. It will be done, Lord Captain. Vigdis bows again. With your gracious permission, I will return to my duties. There you go, and that's how the game kicks off. So let's go ahead and save here. And then, before we leave, I think I'm going to take an opportunity to talk to everybody, because this is the beginning, rather, of Chapter 2, or at least I assume it's the beginning. You really haven't had an opportunity to hear all their personal stories and hear about some of their history, so all those dialogues are available to you. So, unfortunately, we might not really get into combat in this first episode, but I just want to go ahead and get all these out the way, and then hopefully by the second episode at the latest, I can start showing you some of the combat in the game. A thin, pale woman stands head and shoulders above the rest of the crew. There's a thick bundle of cables coming out the back of her skull and disappearing under her ceremonial garment, and you see the grate of a quietly humming vox where her mouth should be. The woman sees you and bows her head in a respectful greeting. How may I serve you, Lord Captain? Fellowship, connect me to the vessel's main channel. I wish to bolster the morale of my crew. Fellowship succeeded. The Vox Master nods obediently and presses several switches on the device she is holding. It is done, Lord Captain. You address the crew with a rousing speech and hear your voice roll through the ship, reaching even the normally quiet corners of the vessel. When the broadcast ends, you hear distant shouts of approval. Remind me who you are. Vox Master Octavius Victus Suriata of the Ptolemon dynasty, the current Vox Master serving aboard your vessel. In accordance with the Seneschal's orders, I assume this duty immediately upon the demise of the esteemed Vox Master Septimus, who was my grandfather. What are the Vox Master's duties? I am the ears and the voice of this void ship. I supervise several dozen officers and 3 times that number of support personnel. We receive, send, encrypt, and decode all incoming and outgoing messages through the ship's internal and external channels. And we also ensure clean communications and the optimal efficiency of the crew's voxcasters. If you ever want to know what worries and concerns your crew are harboring, what your subjects are whispering about in local networks after their shifts, and what their leaders are clamoring about over shortwave Vox transmissions, just come and see me. I will satisfy your curiosity. Have the Vox spirits brought you anything interesting lately? There is unrest on the lower decks, Lord Captain. The guards are actively looking for rabble-rousers and heretics, but the population is extremely unhappy with the harsh treatment. Many are cursing Abelard, whose signature marks the orders, and in whose name the oppression is being committed. You may be interested to know that a group of officers was discussing a grim rumor over lunch. Word has it the apparition of Lord Captain Theodora has been sighted on board lately. Yes, you heard right. They say she is haunting the decks, dragging wayward crew members off into oblivion. Disquiet has spread throughout the ship as the anomaly has been reported in different sections, sometimes entire kilometers apart. The Voxmaster leans closer to you. Master Heinrix van Kalix expressed an interest in our communication stations and Vox networks a short while ago. The interrogator appears to be very well versed in the matters of sacred technology, and it worries me. A man of his knowledge and in his line of work is capable of discreetly planting his own devices in our systems. We will be vigilant, Lord Captain, but you should try to be more careful as well. Why do you look so strange? My appearance comes from my heritage, generation after generation of people who spent their entire lives deep in the depths of this void ship. Neither we nor our ancestors have ever left our home, but the same can be said about many denizens of the Imperium's million worlds. We are used to the silence of the cosmos and the voices of the ship. There are thousands of us, but we dwell far from the Lord Captain's upper decks and remain unseen. We are the Voidborn. Where does the word Voidborn come from? Because we are the children born in the void between the stars, be it the womb of a traveling vessel, an orbital satellite, or a forgotten asteroid station. Low gravity, voyages through the warp, and the countless dangers of space travel. Everything others hate and dread is second nature to us. Tell me about the lives of the Voidborn and my crew. To us, the groans, creaks, and murmurs of the ship sound the way babbling brooks and singing birds do to the world dwellers. We hear the ship breathe, know what it is feeling and thinking. We are a part of the ship, just like it is a part of us. We perform numerous functions, and there are many officers among our number. Some maintain order and prevent mutiny, others serve as shepherds and support the crew, and some devote themselves to mending the body and spirit of the vessel. Most of the Voidborn are members of large void dynasties that bear responsibility for a certain aspect of the ship's life. For 300 years, the main branch of the Ptolemaic dynasty has produced the ship's Voxmasters, and most of our subordinates come from the cadet houses of the dynasty. How do you find life on the ship? Life has been quite generous to me, Lord Captain. I am the Voxmaster, and only the best in the dynasty can become one. By virtue of my skills and position, no one has ever denied me anything. Our family claims a spacious section for its demesnes. I also enjoy long walks through the narrow and dimly lit corridors of the ship, listening to the sounds of her activity, falling asleep and waking up to the chanting of hymns, and admiring the stars beyond, of course. How do others on the ship treat you? We look, speak, and move differently from the inhabitants of the planetary worlds. Our way of life, traditions, and quirks frighten these people, just like the darkness of the cosmos. Many believe us to be the bringers of ill fortune, and alas, it is the Voidborn who get the blame for terrible warp phenomena during longer voyages. Vigdis hesitates before continuing. Several years ago, an unfortunate warp jump caused all the food on board to spoil. 15 days later, a hungry and furious crew nearly massacred everyone on the lower decks, blaming us for the misfortune and hoping to restock the larders with our flesh. I would have been killed during the mutiny had Idira to last not shown up in the right place at the right time. She came to my rescue, and the scoundrels' fear of her was even greater than their fear of the Voidborn. 1 second, let me take a drink. Looks like you're close friends with Idira. Webs of tiny wrinkles appear at the corners of Vigdis's eyes, the only hint that the Voxmaster is smiling. The Voidborn seldom make friends, especially among the captain's entourage, but you see, many consider Idira to be different. I am different too. We have spent plenty of time in each other's company, discussing regicide over a glass of Amasac. Except Idira changed after one incident, and we started to drift apart. The death of Lord Captain Theodora made her withdraw even more. I do not know if Idira considers me her friend now, but we used to be very, very close. It is good I can still look after her in my own way. Have you ever left the ship? Oh, I did once. and it was dreadful. It felt like the massive blue dome overhead could shatter at any moment and fall, and my bones would be crushed by the gravity. Vigdis twitches her shoulders, trying to ward off the flood of memories. The ship is my home, Lord Captain, and I would not trade it even for the bounty of 100 worlds. I see. Let us return to business. As you wish, Lord Captain. That will be all for now. Happy to be of service, Lord Captain. Greetings, rogue trader. Cassia raises her chin and smiles politely. I am always glad of an opportunity to talk to you. Tell me about yourself. I am a part of House Orsilio, an ancient dynasty of the Navis Nobilite. An ancient organization of noble mutant families whose genes allow them to safely traverse the war space. Since time immemorial, our family has served to advance knowledge, pushing at the boundaries of the dark unknown. The Starway Atlas contains 2,843 routes that chart the sectors of the Segmentum Obscurus and reach all the way from the Coronis Expanse to Holy Terror. Holy Terror, the throne world of the Imperium of Man and the original home world of mankind and of the God Emperor. Listen in silence. And uniting the Imperium's thousands of worlds. House Orsilio is bound by commercial pacts to houses Galatis, Hordener, Drotus, and Cassia hesitates. There's a dark blue knot tightening on your neck, Lord Captain. I can see my reply is not satisfying your thirst for knowledge. What is it you desire to hear exactly? So you've never lived anywhere other than Urek 5? Hardly. According to the chronicles of the house, I was born on one of the Orsilio worlds. What was it? Cassia absent-mindedly rubs her temple. Please forgive me, Lord Captain. My childhood memories are too vague. Sometimes I dream about the bright and colorful birds that built their nest in the garden, or the servants dressed in purple livery, or the blue fog that rolled over the lowlands behind the palace. But everything is covered in a rosy haze. Perhaps it is my imagination, not my memory, that is painting these pictures. Tell me about your life on the station. My stay on the station was wholly dedicated to preparing me for my future duty. Astromancy, astrography, numerology, the histories of my house and the Imperium, as well as other disciplines. Dozens of instructors tirelessly prepared me for what destiny had in store. Once a year, Regent Aranto will come to the station and entrust his beautiful vessel to my command so that I can master the practical aspects of our art as well. Did you have friends? Someone you could turn to for a simple conversation, not a discussion of yet another lecture? Cassia blinks in surprise, obviously taken aback by the question. The Regent gave me a bird from a sunlit planet once. I tried to befriend it and make it sing, but for some reason it refused and died soon after. The instructors were too respectful of my duty to my house to waste precious time on idle chatter. Aside from them, there were only servants on the station, and you know they have their vocal cords removed, so they cannot break their vow of silence. And since the subject has been breached, Lord Captain, why do you not follow this honored tradition? Your decks are so garish. Apologies, I meant noisy. The rabble don't just chatter, sometimes they shout and even sing. Why do you allow such a lack of restraint? Rogue traders are highborn, are they not? You may find it, but the practice of the You may find it difficult to believe, but the practice of depriving servants of their voice is not particularly widespread outside House Orsilio. Cassia frowns guiltily. Please forgive me, Lord Captain. I was sure it was a sacred tradition made sacrosanct by the ancient vows of obedience. I expect more surprises will be waiting for me outside the walls of Urek 5. Your third eye, do you always conceal it? Cassia nods slowly. The navigator's open eye is baneful to whoever the warp's ruinous shine falls upon, and therefore it is a symbol of our power. We are the guiding stars of humanity, found worthy of an uncommon gift, and one of the duties that we bear is to guard our eye even from wayward glances that may bear evil. Cassia hesitates for a few seconds and looks away. I am aware that lesser servants of the Imperium may find our appearance repulsive. The navigator gene twists the features the rabble are used to seeing, and the magnificence of our role cannot be grasped by their feeble minds. You are beautiful, Cassia. Do not let anyone or anything convince you otherwise. Cassia falters, her pale cheeks turning pink from embarrassment. Lord Captain, you are overstepping the bounds of propriety. What does it feel like to guide a vessel through the warp? It may be difficult to describe. You see, every navigator perceives the warp differently. My mentor, Regent Aranto, always described his travels through the Immaterium as a journey through a vast wood with countless paths, and I, assisting him in the first voyages, futilely had tried to follow his example, but the wood would not reveal itself to me. But everything changed when I found my own key to this mystery. You see, I've always brightened up my rare moments of leisure time by painting. You may recall there was a workshop in my chambers. As soon as I imagined the warp as a blank canvas, an indescribable feeling came over me. I moved the brush, going deeper and deeper into my own painting. Visions were hidden within the vibrant colors of my palette, and something inside me knew which should be sought out and which should be left behind. I woke up several days later after the voyage was safely complete. I noticed that your love of painting is reflected in your speech as well. You associate so many images with hues and colors. The Emperor graced me with a gift. I could see inner life in addition to the mundane. You cannot know that a fruit is rotted away from the inside until a blade slices it in two. I can see the rot from far away. It roils like swamp mud, oozing through the bright peel. Anger and boredom, sadness and joy, everything that people shut away inside themselves is revealed to me, like colors on the canvas of my world. Why don't we talk about something else? You will hear no objection from me, Lord Captain. Tell me about House Ocilio. As the only voice of our family on this vessel, it is an honor. As long as your questions are courteous, I will answer every one of them. Lore Imperium succeeded. Is the Ocilio prophecy system named after your ancestor? You are shrewd indeed. My ancestor charted that route while fleeing the enemies of humanity. They say the Emperor himself was his guide because the warp expelled their vessel without a single loss. Cassia hesitates and then adds quietly, unfortunately, the lips of those who relate this tale seep with disgusting green hubris. I think Kaelin Ocilio was simply a skilled navigator. I take it House Ocilio has a rich history? Oh yes, the navigators of the house came to the Coronis Expanse fairly recently, a mere 208 years ago. Before that, our ancestors expanded the borders of humankind's dominion for the glory of the Emperor, blazing trails to different corners of the galaxy. Who rules the house? Just as a rogue trader stands at the head of a trade empire, a novator heads a navigator house. Novator, a patriarch or matriarch that rules over a navigator house, the figurative and often biological father or mother of the dynasty. It is the novator who decides where to look for alliances and which path their bloodline is destined to tread. As for our house, the young woman purses her lips slightly. The transfer of power to a successor is currently underway. In the meantime, Regent Aranto Ocilio is ensuring the stability of the house. Wait a minute. The navigator on the station were hesitant to let you go, and the renegade sought your demise. Surely you cannot be the novator's successor. So, says Regent Aranto. Cassia is avoiding your gaze. Nothing is decided yet. Some people in the house become enshrouded in rolling gray clouds at the thought of me becoming the novator. But even more are bound with dull leaden chains. They think I am not ready for such a burden. With your permission, I would like to talk about something else. By all means, what does your special sight reveal? You are engulfed in clouds, the color of dark umber. They carry an old pain and doubt. As if in trance, Cassia reaches for your shoulder with the tip of her fingers. A strange feeling of relief comes over you, as if your lungs have fully opened, allowing you to take a deep breath for the first time in ages. The young woman notices your expression and jerks away, frightened. I beg forgiveness for my inappropriate behavior, rogue trader. When I see oppressive colors, I immediately want to paint them a different hue, to disperse them. I already mentioned I cannot control it except this time, I thought I would be able to, for whatever reason. There is no need to apologize. You mastered the power in order to aid another, to aid me. I'm grateful. She shyly smooths her already perfect hair. This is where I must beg my leave. I have enjoyed your company, rogue trader. Thank you for the conversation. Fascinating. I cannot wait to learn more about her. All right, so she's a party member. The Void, obviously, the Lady of the Void that we spoke to is not a party member, but Cassia is, and Idira is. The tall, middle-aged woman stares straight ahead, her gaze vacant as she rubs the implant at her temple. Augmentation, mechanical or electronic cybernetic substitute for biological limbs or organs. Her collar is undone. One of the clasps is on the verge of falling off. Sensing your presence, Idira turns her head towards you and offers you a crooked smile, even as her eyes look right through you. Idira, about your abilities. With noticeable effort, Idira focuses her gaze on you. She lets out a nervous laugh. What are you talking about, Lord Captain? You are a psyker. Imperial psykers are typically granted the right to live with the Emperor's blessing. Have you ever been to Terra? Idira says nothing for a few seconds and then exaggeratedly rolls her eyes. Look, Lady Theodora couldn't care less if some eggheads measure my brains or not. It's not about the seal on your forehead, get it? It's about what's in your gut, if it's rotten or not. My gut's stronger than the adamantine on this here ship, and my implants are better than the ones they put in you on your Terra. If they weren't, I wouldn't have lived as long as I have. Idira bares her teeth in a savage grin, a febrile gleam in her eyes. Where do you come from? Liera, an outlying world in the Heathen Stars region. In the Coronis Expanse, the deeper you go, the less visible the Astrominican gets, and the less people know about the Imperium. The arrival of a rogue trader is the best thing that can happen to a world like that. The very best. Tell me about Liera. It's an out-of-the-way planetoid between two faint stars. On Liera, a dozen local tyrants fight over 5 measly continents, but they use everything they can to win, from poison to psykers. Psyker, an individual of any intelligent species who possesses some degree of psychic ability or powers. Idira begins wringing her shaking hands. I haven't been there in many years, but there's nothing for me to miss. Trust me. But here on the ship is a different story altogether. I saw more wonders in my first year serving Lady Von Valancius than I'd seen in my whole life on Liera. Like my very first jump through the warp, I was in bed for 3 days. I felt like supernovas were exploding in my head. I only found out later I'd gotten off easy. Just through the bulkhead in the bay next to mine, a whole team turned into... Idira breaks off. Look at me, rambling on, Lord Captain. Pay no attention. You never finished your story about your first time crossing the warp. Idira rubs her nose. It wasn't like it was a very fun trip, Lord Captain. But look, if you want to be entertained, I'm the woman for the job. I'll entertain you with one of the stories from my collection. No problem. But if you want to hear about the time I melted everyone in the bay next door, well, I just don't really want to go into the details on that one, all right? What did you do before you came to be on the ship? I embroidered wall hangings in honor of our national heroes. Ah! Idira cackles. I did the same thing I do here, Lord Captain. Divinely. Our rulers prize the ability to see into the future. Every psyker that can be found was worth a small fortune on Liera. There's no such thing as a peaceful life on Liera. People like me were especially sought after. They'd pick psychers up wherever they found them, buy kids off their parents, even just abduct them. Take me, for instance. I got taken from my street gang. The older kids sold me when they noticed there was something off about me. The ruling dynasties had schools where they trained us and beat us black and blue. And then they packed us off to serve. Some of us held on for a long time, but others didn't last. Not everyone's as smart and talented as me, you know. Some people crossed the line and were out of commission before their time. Idira looks at you expectantly. Then, as though clarifying, she uses her hands to indicate her head exploding and laughs. How did you end up in the rogue trader service? A few times, not many. Oh, whoops, I'm sorry. Have you ever been off the ship? A few times, not many. And if I think about it, why would I want to? I've got everything I need here. All the whispers I hear are familiar ones. They almost feel like family. And if I want to hear about the nightmares off the ship, I can, after I have some Amasac. Amasac, the potent alcoholic liquor. Idira winces and rubs her eyes. But don't go getting the wrong idea. If I have to, I'll follow you to the edge of the galaxy. How did you end up in the rogue trader's service? Theodora van Valancius paid a visit to the ruler I was serving at the time. I don't know what the visit was for, and it's no business of mine anyway. Idira squints, though she's peering at something far away. I can still remember the way the voices in my head changed when I looked at her. They were practically screaming. She had so much behind her, and plenty ahead of her, too. And as I gawped at her, all of a sudden I heard a whisper, a hint, a suggestion. Nothing more. But I know the difference between idle chatter and a real threat. I seized my chance and approached Theodora. I managed to whisper a couple of words in her ear before the guards dragged me away. They beat me and locked me up. No wonder. It wasn't my place to converse with outsiders. And then Theodora's people came for me. They broke down the wall, butchered the guards, all so I could tell them my warning in full. So I said the rest, but I didn't want to go back to my old life, and so I entered the service of the Von Valancius dynasty. Let's talk about something else. Got a new story? Of course, Lord Captain. Got a new story for me, Idira? You bet I do, Lord Captain. Idira becomes much more animated, and her gaze turns slightly dreamy as she recalls one of her stories. Okay, so we went to Footfall once. Well, I mean, Lord Captain Theodora went to Footfall a lot, but on that occasion, she took me with her for some reason. My day had gotten off to a bad start. My head had been yammering since I woke up, but there was nothing else for it. I had to go. We arrived at the place, and what a place. All the gentlemen and ladies dressed to kill, showing off their encrusted implants, all clustered around little tables. Well, turned out it was a gaming den. And not just any gaming den, but one run by somebody with deep pockets for people just as much cash to splash. You should have seen it. People gambling away planets in a game of Regicide. Regicide, a human tabletop game played across the Imperium of Man, similar to the ancient Turan game of chess. Anyway, so the Lord Captain wanted me to help her beat some guy. So I tell her, the chips won't land in your favor, you'll get a bad hand, don't sit down at that table, Your Grace. But did she listen? Of course she didn't. If there's one thing she never lacked, it's stubbornness. So they sat down and the cards were dealt. I'm hovering around like I'm not involved, but I'm keeping my eye on things. And everything in my head keeps getting louder and louder. Anyway, it's a good thing I realized in time that my mind wasn't going haywire over losing hand, but something else. I made some excuse to drag the Lord Captain up from the table and took her away from that place. And a few minutes later, the room where we'd been, Idira can't help herself and burst out laughing. It turned out some wise guy had the same bright idea to bring a pet psyker along with them. One of those ones who just scuttle around in Footfall's underbelly, and the psyker just freaked out, I guess. After all the commotion, people went to see what happened in the room, and they'd all gone for each other's throats, literally, with teeth. Weeping, Idira wipes away a tear. And I think they completely detached that asteroid from Footfall and pushed it off into open space so it would head off toward the local star. What's it like being a psyker? Idira tilts her head to one side, as though listening closely to something. Lord Captain, forgive me, but it would be like talking to a blind person about colors. I could spend hours explaining, but it wouldn't make any sense to you. Every psyker feels their connection with the warp in their own way. One person might see spots and shadows out of the corner of their eye. Another feels fingers running down their spine. As for me, I've got a door in my head, one that's open just a crack. There's no way to close it, no matter how hard I try. I've just had to get used to the whispers from the other side. When I need to use it for work, I listen in more closely, but I usually just try to not notice it. How do you live with this whispering in your head? Training, habit, a little Amasac, and a couple other things you can get on the lower decks. If you pull all those together, it makes things bearable. Idira shrugs and chuckles. Sometimes I even wonder if I'm imagining half the voices I hear. You know, when life on board gets a little boring, better than listening to the living anyhow. What would happen if your door burst open? Idira chuckles, but there's a shrill, strained quality to her laughter. Well, if the door opens, that means somebody's planning to come in, right? But screw them, they're not coming through. Trust me, I know how to keep my valuable head locked up tight. Aren't you afraid of losing control? Only losers who are afraid of their own gifts lose control, or idiots who never figure out what they are before it's too late, or little kids who want to play around with their shiny new toy. If you don't know the limits of your abilities, or you're always bouncing around in your own head, that's a recipe for disaster. Can you see my future? Idira wrinkles her nose and looks around. Then she wipes her hands, gives her head a shake, and finally nods. All right, that's what I'm here for after all, so I'm just going to lean on that door in my head a little more, prick up my ears, and listen to what the warp's got to say about you. Idira grins like she's already heard some salacious detail. If you allow it, I can listen right now? Sure. All right, let's hear what they're whispering about you, Idira laughs, rubs her hands together, and suddenly freezes with a vacant smile on her face, her head slightly tilted. You feel goosebumps appear on your skin, and your collar begins to waver ever so slightly, as if moved by a breeze from a half-open door. Idira's voice is sonorous and crystal clear, almost theatrical. An ancient world with a riven heart. Find the path to it, and its riches will be yours. But paths there are two, and both will cloak you in disgrace, and neither is what it seems. What will you choose, rogue trader? The sin of the Empyrean, or the sin of the dead gods? Another road. The road begins at the threshold of the Coronas and leads to the bowels of the emerging world. Idira turns gray and begins gasping for breath. A foreign voice tears its way out of her rasping throats. The deep, heavy rumbling of a distant avalanche. Reading the threads of fate is not meant for you, slave of the enthroned corpse. Step into the embrace of doom, for thus was it preordained by the architect of fates. Idira sucks in a breath and coughs. Something pale and wriggling flies out of her mouth and hits the floor. White maggots that immediately melt and turn to smoke. That wasn't me. I swear on everything that's holy. I don't know what the second road is or who watches over it, but I beg you, stay away from it. Did you know Theodora von Valancius well? Idira shakes her head. None of the officers knew the Lord Captain well, not even Abelard, and she was always closer to him than anyone else. She told me from the off that if I ever listened to anything in the warp about her without her permission, I'd be going out through an airlock. I'm not an idiot, so I never stuck my nose where it didn't belong, only when I was asked. Idira's gaze darkens, and a strange, otherworldly expression comes over her face. It's hard to wrap my head around the fact that she's gone. Lady von Valancius gave me everything I have. She opened the stars to me in the past between them. I still think I can hear her voice. Idira lets out a sharp breath and shakes her head. Things are strained between you and Argenta, isn't that right? The little sister is afflicted with her own set of voices, ones that whisper to her about corruption and heresy. Idira falls silent and then in a different voice adds, the silly girl doesn't realize that if she wants to find the source, she needs to start by looking in her own head. I have to go. Of course, always at your service, whenever you need me. Yet another fascinating party member. Can't wait to learn more about her. We will definitely, absolutely have a chaos playthrough where we have her give in to all the voices and achieve her true destiny. Heinrix looks at you intently, his head tilted. I know nothing about you, Heinrix. Could you tell me a little about yourself? Heinrix's face is momentarily split by a sarcastic grin. I'm usually the one interested in the paths of those around me, not the reverse. I come from a night world, Bjornsson 3. Night world, feudal worlds that are home to ancient noble dynasties trained to pilot the engines of war called Imperial Knights. I belonged to a branch of one of the noble houses until my exceptional abilities were discovered. After that, I was sent on a black ship to Holy Terror, where I was trained and I began my service for the glory of the Emperor. Black Ship, the dreadful Imperial void ship that transports psychers given up by numerous worlds as part of their tithe to Imperium. How did you discover your abilities? Like many psychers unaware of their curse, I found out when a strong emotional reaction triggered an involuntary response. Heinrix falls silent, then he sighs and reluctantly continues. My great aunt had a pet grick. One day it bit me and I boiled it from the inside out. The interrogator looks away and adds more quietly, and when my great aunt slapped me for what I'd done, I boiled her too. Psychana is truly dangerous. I hope you have mastered your abilities since then. When I arrived on Holy Terror and was tested, I was found to be suitable material for becoming a sanctioned psyker, able to bend his curse to his own will. I can assure you that the adepts of the Astra Telepathica were right in their assessment. Tell me about the Black Ship. Heinrix is silent for so long, you begin to think that an answer will not be forthcoming. Picture a vast prison ship filled with frightened, angry psychers who can't control their abilities and who have just lost their homes and their families. Some of them were children and adolescents like I was. Some were monstrous creatures who no longer had the right to be called human, or psychopaths who reveled in their impure powers. Whenever one of the miscreants broke free, those in command simply depressurized the bay and got rid of the culprit, along with the prisoners and crew tainted by him. But even after that, I heard the echo of inhuman suffering and terror that filled that part of the ship. It grieves me to recall that episode to this day. You were sent to the Inquisition straight after training? No. First, I was accorded the status of a psyker, fit for service in the Imperial Guard, where I spent several years. Astra Militarum, the primary combat force and first line of defense of the Imperium, also known as the Imperial Guard. It was only afterward that I became an agent of the Golden Throne. Heinrix stops there, clearly not intending to elaborate further. Golden Throne, an arcane cybernetic artifact that possesses the ability to greatly amplify psychic powers of the God Emperor. Let's talk about something else. Heinrix nods wordlessly. How long have you served in the Inquisition? Since the day of my initiation as an acolyte, so decades. Heinrix shrugs. How many real years it's been, it's hard to say. When I return from a journey through the warp, I often discover that much more or much less time has passed in real space. You visited many worlds during your service, I wager. Indeed, I have visited many of the places brought to the Emperor's light, and those sullied by the filth of the archenemy. Chaos, a malign metaphysical force comprised of psychic energy that exists in an alternate dimension. In truth, even after all these years spent visiting the various corners of the Imperium and looking beyond its borders, I still consider the Segmentum Solar to be the greatest of all humanity's bastions. Nothing compares to the majesty of Holy Terror, the might of Mars, the grandeur of the segments of the worlds. Mars, also known as the Red Planet, it is the first and greatest forge world of the Imperium of Man and the home world of the cult Mechanicus. What duties have you been carrying out for the Inquisitor? The interrogator meets your gaze and smiles, but thanks to the expression in his ice-cold eyes, the effect is rather unnerving. You can't really be expecting me to answer that question, can you? For someone who's been in service for decades, you certainly look young. The first step for biomancers such as myself is to take control of the processes of their own body, including aging. Heinrix smiles crookedly. I have endured innumerable hazards in my work. If I allowed every trace of them to remain, I would look completely different today. Let's change the subject. Gladly. You're not the Inquisitor's only acolyte, correct? Of course not. The Lord Inquisitor's entourage comprises dozens of people, the best of the best, experts in various fields and disciplines. Some of them I know personally, others I have never met. Heinrix's gaze becomes pensive, and he seems to look through you to something beyond. To be honest, I'm not even certain that the people I know are still alive. I used to work with other followers of the Lord Inquisitor, but in the Coronis Expanse, I have been working alone. If you're an interrogator, does that mean you hold a special position in the retinue? We are not a retinue, World Trader. We are followers. As for your question, I am closer than anyone else to the one I call my personal teacher. The Lord Inquisitor deemed me worthy of undertaking the most important and sensitive task, requiring the attention of agents of the Golden Throne. Are there other acolytes in the Coronis Expanse? The interrogator narrows his eyes at you and releases a disappointed sigh. After several seconds of silence, you realize that you will not be getting an answer. Let's talk about something else. Such as, I want to discuss the cult of the Final Dawn. What can you tell me about it? The cult's ordinary members are humans who have been corrupted by the archenemy, traitors to the Imperium, and accomplices of chaos. Participation in the cult's ritual always entails brainwashing, literally and figuratively. The longer cult members spend among other cultists, the less critically they think, and the more closely they resemble obedient livestock, stripped of their fear and instinct for self-preservation. The worst of them go to their deaths without an inkling of doubt, ready to take hundreds and thousands of souls with them. As for those at the top of the cult's hierarchy, we have not yet managed to get a lead on all of the cult's leaders. I imagine that some of them are hiding in the depths of the Coronis Expanse, but those who are orchestrating the fanatics on nearby worlds are hiding very well indeed, or receiving protection from above. Remind me, what is your mission regarding the cult? I need to confirm the reports from my agents. According to them, one of the cult's leaders is in the Kiava Gamma segment, an industrial world within the dominion of the Von Valancius dynasty. I hope you won't impede my investigation. What do you mean, protection from above? Governors, commanders, rogue traders. History is full of those who neglect their duty to the Golden Throne and seek allies in the wrong places. You seem to have been investigating this cult for some time. We discovered the first traces of it as soon as we arrived in the Coronis Expanse. Since then, the more we learn, the better we see just how far the roots of this blight extend. Destroying individual cells is pointless. We must cut this beast off at its head. Let's talk about something else. As you wish, Rogue Trader. What can you do as a psyker? The Lord Inquisitor was most insistent that I master the discipline of sanctic demonology. I use my faith and my power to crush the enemies of the Imperium. Servants of chaos tremble at the sound of the Emperor's name, uttered by my lips. I am also a skilled biomancer. I can manipulate bodily processes. Sometimes I resort to those skills in the course of my work, when it is necessary to make the subject of interrogation more cooperative. I have to go. Heinrix politely inclines his head in response. Awesome. All right. And he's yet another party member, but he's not a party member just yet. We're able to recruit him later on. All right. I think we got time to go through one more party member. Abelard surveys you briskly, but meticulously, as though he is suspecting you for shortcomings. Then he offers a courteous nod. Lord Captain, let's talk about things that may be useful to me as the Rogue Trader. Abelard nods approvingly. A noble aspiration, Lord Captain. I am ready to acquaint you with all the particulars that interest you. Outline the situation in the Coronis Expanse for me. What do I need to know and keep in mind? This is the topic for an official briefing, not a casual conversation, but I will try to answer succinctly and, if you permit, in my own words. Abelard takes a breath and begins. The Coronis Expanse is considerably removed from the heart of the Imperium. This means that local warp routes become useless within months. Established trails are regularly subject to attacks from all kinds of rabble, and in the only major port, Imperial frigates find themselves moored along pirate vessels. Until recently, the Corellis Expanse could hardly have been called an Imperial region. The situation has changed with the arrival of the Lord Inquisitor, but not by much. Lord Inquisitor, the Inquisition, the secret organization tasked with hunting down any and all of the myriad threats to the stability of the Imperium and all mankind. This place operates under its own rules, you see, more radical, so to speak, but ones that allow for a non-standard approach where there is promise of victory. The Corellis Expanse is considered rogue trader territory for a reason. Only rogue traders have sufficient military might, audacity, and the rights granted them by the warrant to survive the leap into the unexplored part of the Expanse, in the event of a successful outcome, to hold on to whatever they manage to capture on the frontier. Warrant of Trade, a sacred Imperium relic that certifies the outstanding rights of the rogue trader across the galaxy. Who are the main players I need to be aware of in the Corellis Expanse? In the first instance, you should treat official representatives of the Imperium with respect. The Expanse may be on the fringes, but it still numbers among the territories of the Golden Throne. The arrival of the Lord Inquisitor has turned the Corellis Expanse into a less wild and uncontrolled region, to the regret of some individuals who have grown inured to the local lawlessness. Rogue traders such as yourself are also servants of the Imperium. They have been accorded special rights and powers. They wield immense authority within their territory, and they enjoy absolute respect in other parts of the Expanse. The most powerful of them are Caligos Winterscale and Insidia Bastal Corda. Tread carefully when dealing with either of them. If we are to speak of unclaimed territory, which is what Footfall is, among the scum that dwells on that handful of asteroids, there are three factions that wield considerable influence in the sector. The first is the Casbalika Mission, organized crime in its most primitive form. It holds sway over the Liege of Footfall and has links to the rogue trader Winterscale. The second faction is an offshoot of our shining Ecclesiarchy, followers of St. Drusus. Oh, we already saw. They are actively building their forces and hold influence over rogue trader Corda. And finally, the third faction, the Explorators, a wing of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They are willing to die and kill for the secrets of the ancient technological heresies that are hidden among the stars of the Corellis Expanse. Conrad, our previous master of whispers, what can you tell me about his betrayal? What do you think he'll do next? Abelard winces as though from toothache, and he makes no attempt to hide his feelings. You know, Lord Captain, I am no admirer of fine art, but when we next find ourselves in a civilized port with time to spare, I will promptly find an artist to commission a portrait of the individual to whom you refer with a hole between the eyes. Conrad Voigtver. That he committed his treachery and escaped with his life was an unforgivable oversight. Abelard frowns for a moment, then continues. We both served Lord Captain Theodora for many years, and we never saw eye to eye. He was brash. He was never afraid of assuming responsibility, and he willingly took on difficult tasks. I am loath to admit it, but the Von Valancius Empire continues to reap the fruits of his labors to this day. His service always garnered my respect, but everything else about him made me want to wring the neck of that two-faced snake. If you are taking comfort in the thought that we will hear no more of Conrad, prepare to be disappointed. You thwarted his plans. He meticulously plotted and nurtured treachery. He is sure to attempt to strike at you, and he will use his contacts and knowledge of the trade empire to do so. The only question, Lord Captain, is whether you will be able to anticipate his next steps. That is all for now. As you wish, Lord Captain. I'd like to know more about my seneschal. As you wish, Lord Captain. What would you like to know? Tell me about yourself. Where were you before you became Theodora's seneschal? I used to be an officer in the Navis Imperialis, Imperial Navy, the battle fleets of the Imperium of Man, also known as the Navis Imperialis. Abelard replies proudly, No, used to be is not quite right. It was not simply a job. It was my calling, the essence of my life. I was happy to serve Lord Captain Theodora, but in my heart and mind, I am still an Imperial officer. I met Lord Captain Theodora on a mission where the Imperial Navy was providing reinforcements to the rogue traders' army on one of the frontier worlds. Our acquaintance was not easy. Working with people outside the Navy hierarchy has never been my strong suit. It was to my great surprise then that after the mission's completion, I received the referral to leave my service in the Navy and join the Rogue Trader's personal council. It was a difficult choice for me, but I saw in the offer a chance to serve the interests of humanity even more effectively than in the Navy's imperialists. You do not need me to tell you just how remarkable a person Lord Captain Theodora was. I recognized her at once as a true leader and formidable creative force, one who had built a trade empire amidst the dangers and wildness of the Coronas. Leaving the Imperial Navy is far from easy. Why were you permitted to quit your post? You could say there was no one among the Naval Command who was willing to impede the wishes of the Rogue Trader. To do so would be to risk their own position and their relationship with Theodora. Abelard chuckles. The Lord Captain possessed certain contacts in the Imperial Navy, contacts which she used to request help during the conflict on the border world, and which enabled her to make an offer that resulted in my joining her retinue. Coercion check succeeded. Abelard seems to crack slightly under your intense gaze. The Navis Imperialist is an ancient institution with its own mandates and muster list. On occasion, in the heat of an official briefing or an informal discussion, I violated those rules, determined to press my point. It is challenging to choose the words to accurately express my opinion on a situation or the actions of others that does not sound overly scathing or confrontational. Many in command were inclined to view my manner of speaking as unbefitting a person of my rank. The way you talk about Theodora, I'm beginning to think you were in love with her. What? Abelard appears to have lost the power of speech. Lord Captain, any allegations of improper feelings or unsanctioned relations are utterly baseless and borderlining on insulting. He furrows his brow and adds, utterly baseless. Do you have a family? I am a widower, Abelard responds demurely. I am a father of 4 and, if my information is not outdated, a grandfather of 11. My family lives on Dargonis. None of my children expressed any eagerness or aptitude for serving aboard ship, and I would hardly have insisted that they follow in my footsteps. Thank you. I have no more questions. Of course. Do you have any advice for me? You must become a true rogue trader and reassert control over the Von Valancia's trade empire as quickly as possible. Everything, from the ship to the most distant of your planets, must work together as parts of a single machine blessed by the finest tech priest. Your position is far from enviable, but that means you must be vigilant. Even the smallest oversight could grow into a huge problem, so be vigilant and exacting towards yourself and others. I have to go. Until next time, Seneschal. Lord Captain, Abelard gives you a regulation salute. Awesome. Okay. If that's all the time we have for today, but we've got 1, 2, and I think maybe one more back here, party members to talk to, and then we'll jump off the ship and get involved in our first combat encounter. But that's it for now. That gives you an idea of at least some of the art in Rogue Trader, the dialogue. You've met some of the party members. So like I said, unfortunately, this wasn't going to be an episode where we could do a lot of the exploration and combat, but there's plenty of time. We will definitely get to that. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and leave me a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.